time. Yes, we are recording this morning's program, and we'll post it for viewing a little bit later on the Chamber's YouTube channel. And I'm sure that our friends over at Delhi Telephone Company will be posting it for viewing to a wider audience on their local one station next few days. In a few minutes, we're going to connect this morning with New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. And if you have any questions for the Comptroller, please post it in the chat box. Before we're joined by Controller DiNapoli, please let me update you on a few things that the Chamber has been working on over these last several weeks. First, the printed version, you can see that, I know it's backwards, of our travel guide is now available. And again, rather than that typical endless lists that most guides employ, ours is more of an experiential guide to the many assets that we have here in Delaware County. And it's in a lot of ways, it's really more of a lifestyle publication and can assist your business in your recruitment and onboarding efforts. I'm happy to tell you that distribution of the guide started last week, bringing a little bit of Delaware County to information centers and points from Albany to Utica to Binghamton to Northern Jersey and along the New York State Thruway. So we're sharing a little bit of that Delaware County love with a large audience. If you would like some of the 50,000 guides that we just received, contact us here at the Chamber. We can arrange a time for you to pick them up. And our team, all of us have our trunks filled with boxes of travel guides, and we're dropping them off at locations around the county. Also, we're working on a full redesign of our DelawareCounty.org website. The new site, again, is going to focus on more of a personal and business relocation and give you, our members, more targeted information that you can use in your business. I'm hoping we're working toward a launch within the next few weeks. Also, we are seeking volunteers interested in promoting the Chamber. Welcome new members and to make our events even more successful. It's our Chamber ambassadors, and they will be attending ribbon cuttings, grand openings, and other events. And as an ambassador, you can connect with new and existing members, meet community leaders, promote your business while building community growth, and gain valuable personal and professional recognition. So if you're interested in becoming one of our ambassadors, just let us know. And finally, you hear this from me all the time. We're always looking for members because with numbers, we're stronger. So with the ever-changing news that affects businesses, that's coming out of Albany, that's coming out of Washington, having reliable and accurate information that you can use for your business has really never been more important than it is right now. The Chamber is really your one source for assistance, for ideas, for inspiration, and of course, the facts. If you're not already a member, we encourage, what are you waiting for? We encourage you to join the Chamber. Membership truly is an investment in your business every single day. So, information about membership, Chamber news, registration for events. You already know the website, folks, DelawareCounty.org. That's where you can get all that information. We rely on your continued support, both your attendance at events such as the one this morning, and your financial support to help carry out our mission of supporting businesses here in Delaware County. Event sponsorship allows us to create these opportunities to learn and engage with regional leaders and case of this morning, a statewide leader. Delaware National Bank of Delhi sponsoring this morning's program, and I give them a big thank you for their continued support. And I'm happy to introduce to you this morning DNB Delhi branch manager, Marissa Dibble, who's going to give us a brief update on what's happening at Delaware National Bank of Delhi. Marissa, turn it over to you.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here this morning, and I'm so glad we can still stay connected, even though we can't have our usual breakfasts and get-togethers. As Ray said, I am the branch manager here in Delhi. I have been with the Delaware National Bank of Delhi for 14 years now. Hard to believe, but it's been wonderful. We're very proud to be able to participate at the sponsors event today. I'll give you just a quick overview of our bank and what we have to offer. We're actually the third oldest bank in New York State. So we were established in Delhi in 1839, and we're the only bank headquartered in Delaware County. We are actually also the 25th oldest bank in the United States, which is pretty amazing. So, you know, we've been doing things right for a long time. We're the last man standing, the only real community bank left. So we're very proud of that. We're proud of the fact that you can call us and you can talk to a real person immediately. You don't have to have prompts to go through, and, you know, we always are there to help. We have 4 branch offices. We have our main office located here in Delhi on Main Street. We have an office in Margaretville that is located on Route 28. We have a branch in Davenport, which is on Route 23. And we have a branch in Hobart right next to the Mirabito, right on Route 10. In 2012, we opened our first loan production office on Main Street in Minnetonka, and we also now have a loan production office on Route 7 in Sydney. So that's something new and exciting as well. Like most institutions, we offer deposit and loan products for both consumers and commercial customers. We have a robust internet banking program and a mobile app. We have a mobile app also for our business customers. You can visit us at any of our locations, or you can check us out on our website. It's dnbd.bank. You can download the free mobile app, and something new that we're offering our business customers, especially now in today's age where it's harder sometimes to get to the bank. A lot of people are working from home still. We have remote capture. So you can actually sit at your desk in your office and you can scan in your deposits that way. Again, we're happy to sponsor today's event, and we're very thankful to Ray for all that he does for all of the local businesses. And I'll turn it back over to Ray.
Wow, thanks, Marissa. And thank you for that little plug. Well, now it's my pleasure to introduce to you New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli to you this morning. The Comptroller has been a guest of ours at past breakfasts, and his staff, particularly Matt Martini, who's on this call, is a familiar face to all of us here in Delaware County. Let me tell you a little bit about the Comptroller as way of introduction. In 1986, Tom DiNapoli ran for the New York State Assembly and was elected to represent the 16th Assembly District in northwestern Nassau County for the next 20 years. Tom was elected State Comptroller back in February of 2007 by a bipartisan majority of the state legislature. He was elected Comptroller by New York State's voters in 2010, 14, and 18. Over those years, Tom has been known for his integrity, independence, and even-keeled leadership. His record as State Comptroller reflects an unwavering commitment to protect people's money, the people's money, that's with a capital P, keep government accountable, and build toward a better future for New Yorkers. Tom, and you gave me permission to call you Tom, last time we met, you may recall. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Great, thank you for that great introduction. You can call me Tom. My family calls me Thomas. And if we know each other for another 10 years, I'll let you call me Tommy, but you're not quite, you're at the Tom point, but not at the Tommy point yet.
All right, good. I'll remember that. And I'll remind you in another 10 years. Tom, it's an interesting time, certainly in Albany right now. The legislature recently passed a budget that includes $12 billion of one-time aid from the federal government, yet increases taxes by an additional $4 billion. Now, you're the guy charged with keeping New York State along the fiscal straight and narrow path. What's your reaction to the budget?
Yeah, Ray, I'll get to that. Just let me first thank you again for inviting me to participate. And I look forward to when you can invite me, we could do this in person again. And I'm glad I got on early enough to hear your run through of all the activities you have going on. And obviously for Delaware County, the Chamber plays such an important role promoting the interests of the county, obviously for businesses, especially all small businesses, but also bringing together the government and nonprofit sector together. So thank you to you and your colleagues for the great advocacy, and also shout out to Marissa and the team at Delhi National Bank, which I didn't realize has been around since, what was it, 1839? I mean, that's wonderful history. That's really great. And Matt Martini, you gave a shout out to, appropriately so. And he's there to be a resource, our regional rep for Delaware. I also want to mention that Elliot Auerbach is on or will be joining us. He's our deputy controller for local government and school district accountability. Many of you knew him when he was the county controller for Ulster County. So our team is certainly focused on what's happening in Delaware. And I appreciate the Q&A format so we can get to a lot of topics, right? Keep in mind a couple of things in answering the question on the budget. We do keep an eye on the money. That's our role as controller. But I am always respectful of the role that the governor and the legislature plays to actually set the budget, right? So sometimes people think as controller, I'm deciding how much money goes where, or we're giving out grants. No, that's not our job. When the legislature and the governor put the budget together, we're the ones that make sure the money is spent as it's been appropriated. We do the contracts that approve the grants. We do the payments to the businesses and the vendors that are working with the state. We process the aid payments, to the villages and the towns and the counties and the cities and the school districts. So, when we look at the budget question as you pose it, I really look at it from the big picture perspective. So a couple of things in responding to your question. When the governor presented his budget proposal back a couple months ago, we did a quick analysis. And what we're in the process of doing right now, hopefully be completed in the next week or two, could hopefully that soon, we'll do a more detailed analysis of the enacted budget proposal.
Okay.
And we're not going to comment, pro and con on whether the choices made were the best choices. What we're really going to look at are the underlying assumptions. Are the revenue estimates reasonable? And I say that particularly from the perspective of the long-term picture, right? The legislature and the governor, and as you mentioned, I was in the legislature for 20 years. When there's a budget deadline, everybody's focused on getting the budget done. And frankly, it lends to a very short-term perspective in terms of making decisions on the state finances. And that has really created the dynamic that we've had in New York for many years, where we get through a budget year and then we always start with a budget gap. And that predates the pandemic and everything we've been going through as far as revenue losses. So that short-term thinking is something that we try to press as much as we can and advocate for the legislature and the governor to take a much longer-term view. So Ray, one of the first things we're going to look at is what will be the impact in the out years in terms of the budget decisions being made right now. An important piece to answer that question is what's going to follow up probably also in the next 2 weeks. The Division of Budget will release the state financial plan, and that will give even more detail as to out year numbers. So where we sit right now, some of the questions that I have really have to do with the assumptions. You mentioned the tax increases, a lot of that related to higher income tax brackets. Personal income tax revenue tends to be very volatile. And there's a real question, and we raise this question as to whether or not those increase, the brackets on our upper income New Yorkers are going to result in the the out-migration of more people out of the state, particularly those who pay a big part of the freight. You know, the top 1% of taxpayers pay about 40% of the personal income tax revenue for the state. You know, anecdotally, a lot of people say, you know, we can't afford it anymore. We're going to move. It's easier now after COVID, where we've been living in Florida or wherever, you know, to change our legal address. You know, nobody really knows for sure what the impact will be, but we have to look at that because of the volatility. So we're going to raise that question as to how reliable the projections are in terms of what the revenue created, what it will be. We're certainly concerned about the federal aid. Thank God it's there, makes a big difference for us, but it's not going to be there forever, right? You know, and shout out to Chuck Schumer. Obviously, his role as majority leader was pivotal in getting the American Rescue Plan done and as favorable as it is to New York. But we can't assume that federal money is going to be there forever. Now, some of it can be spent over time, but there's going to be a cliff at some point. And one of the concerns we have, and we're going to, you know, amplify when we put out our budget report, is that with all this money that was being spent, between the federal money coming in, better than expected tax revenue from what was initially projected, and we had certainly identified that months ago in our reports, and the increased taxes, missed opportunity. We still are lagging behind so many other states in building up our reserve funds, our rainy day funds. We didn't add any money to those accounts. So we're not preparing for the business cycle, as we learned the hard way this year, where it could certainly go down. So, I mean, those are some of the preliminary takeaways, but look, bottom have there's a lot in that budget that will help New Yorkers who are struggling, including small businesses, I might add, and certainly many who have been severely impacted by COVID-19. Significant help for local governments that have had big revenue losses, a lot of money for healthcare, big investment in education, really historic numbers. So, so the legislature and the governor made a judgment to do what they can to repair the damage from COVID-19, hopefully to set us up for a strong recovery. But as always, there are a lot of moving parts, and it is a big number. This is a much larger budget than the governor first proposed, and it really is relying on those tax increases that, in fact, they'll generate the revenue projected, and big money from Washington. Those both long-term, raise some challenging questions.
Tom, you mentioned small business, and obviously that's an area of prime interest to most of us on the call. And you mentioned about the sales tax and the losses that a lot of counties saw, and certainly the state saw. Here in Delaware County, according to your reports, we actually saw in Delaware County during 2020 more than a 10% increase in our sales tax revenue. Yet at the same time, we think that many of our small businesses, other indicators are telling me that our small businesses actually have lost about 25% in revenue. You understand the challenges that small business owners face here in upstate New York. Are there, and I know this is a legislative issue rather than a controller issue, but are there measures that you think we can expect to see to help small businesses not only recoup those COVID-19 capital costs, but also recover from that revenue loss, in part due to government actions over the past 15 months?
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot in, between the American Rescue Plan and money that's going to flow to the state and certain state initiatives, some which exist and some new ones that are coming out from this. Let me just say that the sales tax numbers are interesting. Delaware County, the numbers have been better, certainly in the statewide numbers.
Yeah.
Some of that may have to do, not all this is broken out. We're hoping, and now, as you know, Ray, we're doing monthly sales tax reporting. Some of that seeming conflicting information, right, that you outlined may have to do with the fact that now on internet sales, we're able to collect taxes, sales taxes that we weren't able to do a couple of years ago because of court cases and changes in law. So, certainly for many of our more rural counties, That seems to have been a big change in dynamic that made some of those numbers look a little better than some folks had anticipated. No doubt that for small businesses, it's been a very, very tough time. So, just top line numbers, the American Rescue Plan, I think, as you know, have been following over $7 billion in more funding for the Payroll Protection Program, $10 billion with the State Small Business Credit Initiative, $15 billion for the Targeted Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, almost $27 billion for Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And much of this, for New York will flow through the state. So in terms of the state budget, initiatives that hopefully will aid small businesses as part of getting us back to where we want to be and moving forward. With that credit initiative, $600 million will be leveraged as part of the state budget on behalf of New York small businesses. $800 million for a new COVID-19 pandemic small business recovery program. And that's set up for small businesses that will not qualify for relief under that federal credit initiative. $40 million for grants to support cultural nonprofit organizations that have been impacted by COVID-19. And that includes another $20 million of capital funding for cultural and art facility improvements. A $35 million program in tax incentives for eligible restaurants. Is going to be a new restaurant return to work tax credit program that's part of the state budget. $25 million for the New York Restaurant Resiliency Grant Program, and regulations will be promulgated for that program from Empire State Development. So the state is partially leveraging the American Rescue Plan federal dollars, but also with some new state dollars, has a series of these programs. And keep in mind, this is in addition to the existing programs that are out there, including some that we help to fund with small business lending through the Pursuit Lending Program initiative. So I would say, Ray, to any of your colleagues that are interested in any of the specifics on that, follow up with Matt, and he will get you the up-to-date information about how to apply for some of these programs and what the ground rules are. So there is certainly a concerted effort to try to help small businesses as we get from this painful time into a recovery mode.
Well, that's great news. That's great news. One of the questions that was just posted related to that is folks are trying to find that line by line information about the budget. Is that something that we're going to get those details? We got the big numbers. Are we going to get those the weeds, if you will, the details when Division of Budget comes out with their report in a couple weeks, and maybe when your office comes out with that?
Yeah, I mean, I hopefully our report will give a lot of detail. But if there's any specific item, again, I would just say, let us know, let Matt know. We could certainly track down. And I mean, it's the budget documents, are yay big, so there's plenty of detail that's available. But if anybody on the call has a specific program that they're interested in, just let us know. We'll be happy to provide that to you.
Great. Well, I see Matt has already shared his contact information, and Matt is, Matt's wonderful. I got to put in a plug for Matt. He's what a great resource he has proven to be for us here in Delaware County. Tom, you mentioned the American Rescue Plan, American Rescue Act, and certainly Senator Schumer and other members of the New York State congressional delegation have been praising it and been talking about those dollars, the funds that are coming to counties and local municipalities. For those on the call, I know you know these numbers, but Delaware County as an entity, as a county entity, is slated to receive nearly $9 million. Our towns and villages will receive another $4.8 million in total. So I have two questions, and one I think you partially answered regarding those funds. How do those funds really help state and local governments recover from the pandemic? And secondly, And more importantly, I think, do you expect your office is going to have a role in the oversight and the distribution of the funds that are coming out of that American Rescue Plan?
Yeah. Yeah, and Ray, I'll just add that with our numbers, as far as school districts in Delaware County, you're talking about
Yeah.
another $19.5 million there. And SUNY Delhi slated to receive about another close to $8 million, I think, in the numbers that I've seen. So, and another $3.9 million for student grants that could benefit Delhi students. So, yeah, a lot of money flowing into the county. So, you know, the overall goal obviously is to repair damage from COVID-19. And by that, I mean, you know, the obvious, the economy being on hold, economic activity down, impacting on government revenues, you know, even though, you know, we're better than anybody thought we would have been. You think back to April and May of 2020, how dire the situation looked. You know, we're still off, you know, in terms of pre-pandemic levels of revenue, you know, even in terms of unemployment. And again, the rates there, Delaware is doing a little better than the state, but you know, still down. I mean, we've lost jobs, you know, compared to, you know, where we were pre March, April, May of 2020. So the overall goal of these monies is to repair the damage, to reimburse for COVID-19 related expenses, to pay salaries for you know, for government workers that have been frontline essential workers in dealing with the pandemic, all with the view of getting us all back on our feet. It's a lot of money though flowing, as you point out, and certainly our role, a very key part of what we do, is the accountability agenda. As I said earlier, we don't make the policy choices on where to spend the money, but when the decision is made, you know, we then do the follow-up in terms of when payments go out the door from the state. You know, we have an audit function within our group that handles you know, payments and contracts. And then Elliott Auerbach Shop on local government and school district accountability, they do audits, you know, at a very granular level of cities, counties, towns, villages, school districts. So, you know, certainly our respective audit divisions will be looking at the overall spending of all of these entities we're talking about that are getting this money, including, you know, helping to ensure the money is being spent in an appropriate way. Now, keep in mind, you're talking about, you know, over 12 billion, you know, right to the state. You're talking about close to 6 billion for New York City, 5 billion for local governments outside. You know, it's, you know, you're talking about a lot of money. So we don't have unlimited audit resources, but certainly, Ray, we're going to do what we can to keep a priority on making sure the money is being spent as intended. And many of these federal dollars will be spent over time. It won't be spent all, you know, in 1 year. And that may be a good thing, because, you know, if they spent it all right away, you'd really hit that cliff very early. So we're really going to be looking at how thoughtful, not just the state, but our local governments will be in using this money in a prudent way.
That's excellent. Tom, one of the lesser known aspects of your position is that you control the pension fund for millions of retired public employees. And I'll note that that includes my 87-year-old mother-in-law down on Long Island. How has that fund been impacted by the pandemic?
Well, the good news is you tell your mother-in-law that her retirement security is safe and secure. That's the good news. We were impacted. There's a lot to say about this. I'll try to keep it short, because sometimes I go on about the pension fund because it's a very important part of what we do.
Go right ahead.
You know, keep in mind the timing on this. So we value the fund, you know, once a year. That's the number that is what we report as part of our financial accounting. It's the number that goes into our calculation for the contribution rate that we charge the government employers. And our valuation date is tied to the state fiscal year, which ends on March 31st. So we value the pension fund every March 31st. Now, go back to a year ago. COVID-19 hit in mid-March. The world literally went upside down overnight. The stock market, and we're not only invested in the stock market, but that's a big part of where our pension fund dollars go. The low point, I think, was March 23rd or thereabouts. And as you remember, well, you know, the market's really tanked. So by March 31st of last year, the recovery that we've seen since then did not happen. So actually, we ended the fiscal year March 31st, 2020 with a negative. We hadn't had a negative for 10 years. The last negative we had was when the Great Recession hit, also March of 2009 being a low point. So we were down 2.68%. 10 years before, we were down 26%. So, you know, by comparison, it was certainly a much more modest drop, but it was a drop. So partially because of that, we did have to raise the contribution rate that we charge to our government employers, and that means taxpayers, impact on taxpayers, for the payment due in February of 2022. There's always a lag and a lead time before the payments are announced. So we were at the end of March 2020, about $194 billion, with the third largest public pension fund in the country. So an update as to where we're at right now. Well, we haven't done the final numbers for March 31st of this year, because again, that's our hard number, audited number, so we're finalizing that. But our estimated value at the end of December was about $247 billion. So we went from 194 billion March 31st to 247 billion at the end of December. Much of that has to do with the fact that the stock market came back so strong. But as I said, we're not only invested there, and our other investments have performed well. My expectation, Ray, when we do the numbers for March 31st, will be even higher than that 247 number. So what does that mean? The big numbers are not what's important. What's important is how well funded are we, right? So what matters to your mother-in-law is the fact that we have enough money to pay for her pension and for people who are working today for their pensions down the road. Before the pandemic hit, we were ranked the second best funded state pension plan in the country at 98% funded, virtually a fully funded pension plan. Many states have very poorly funded pension plans, and it creates a lot of problems. We certainly went below that figure at the end of last March, but because we've come back so strong, we're going to be well into the 90% funded level once again. So the good news there for our retirees and future retirees, our plan continues to be safe and secure. And by the way, we're paying out over $1 billion a month in benefits. So our fund has been growing, even though we probably paid out over the past year about $13 billion in benefits. So, and 80% of our retirees are like your mother-in-law. They stay in New York State, which means they're spending that money in our local communities, and that's good news. What I hope for our next round, when we do the calculations for the employer contributions, again, my goal as trustee is to keep the plan well-funded, first and foremost. But if we could do that in a way that we could at least keep the rate stable, or maybe even if we can reduce them a bit, I'll certainly try to do that. But I always tell my friends in local government, my goal as trustee is to keep the plan well-funded for the long term. And frankly, part of that is we've been taking a bit of a more conservative view of long-term, what the markets will be and what the returns will be. So we're trying to balance a lot. But the good news for today is that we more than have made back the losses that we suffered at the end of March of 2020. And our plan is well positioned for strength for many years to come.
Well, on behalf of my mother-in-law, thank you.
Very important to keep our mother-in-laws happy.
Even if they don't quite know where they are. Yes. Tom, in your role as fiscal watchdog, we've talked about this before, and Matt has already linked, given everyone a link to some of the audits that you've done. Your office conducts audits of tax-funded entities across New York State, counties, towns, villages, school districts, fire departments, and others. Yeah. You're among friends here, even though we don't get a chance to call you Tommy yet. You can tell us what's really going on.
You're getting
Are there any recent audits conducted here in Delaware County that revealed conditions which our business community should be aware of?
Well, there have been, and I think some of it's been covered pretty well in the press. Village of Delhi, we had an audit that went out in early 2020, found weaknesses in internal controls and an issue with the former clerk treasurer.
Yep.
in terms of issuing checks for herself that she wasn't entitled to. And as you know, she pled to a charge of petty larceny. Town of Delhi, not to be picking on Delhi in answering
Oh,
your
go right
question.
ahead.
But the audit is ongoing, but we found the deputy highway superintendent overstated sick and leave balances. And as you know, that matter in terms of his case is pending in court. So that's one. We did a recent audit of fire districts in the area. And again, not unusual. The issue often gets back to internal controls and lack of appropriate checks and balances. And, any of the audits that we've done, are certainly on our website. I'll mention, so in terms of those audits, Delhi Joint Fire District, Davenport Fire District, our recent one, Stamford Fire District. And in terms of audits we have ongoing right now that are in progress, so these aren't done yet. And I also mentioned Middletown, Andes, those fire districts as well. So we have some school district audits going on, Franklin, Treadwell, Hancock, Town of Walton, I mentioned Town of Delhi, Town of Hancock, East Meredith Rural Fire District, Grand Gorge Fire District, Masonville Fire District, and Margaretville Central School District was an audit completed back in June of 2020. There, the issue was on fund balance and concern about overestimation of appropriations and resulting in a higher fund balance than we thought made the most sense. So yeah, a lot of audits underway, and I would say on that that again, that's where Elliot Auerbach's shop is important. If there anybody on the call that has any concerns about any of the entities that I mentioned, or if you're aware of any situation locally that you think we should be looking at that we're not, be in touch with Elliot or certainly through Matt, and we'll certainly have our auditors take a look at any suggestions that anybody may have.
That's a surprisingly large number that your office has done here in big old little Delaware, rural Delaware County, just over the last couple months. That's pretty impressive. Another aspect of your office, of your responsibilities I want to talk about are those recovered funds. When you visited us last about 18 months or so ago, you brought me, well, not me, the chamber, a very large check, and in size, not necessarily the amount, from the recovered funds program. So I don't see you holding a large check behind your back today. So I don't expect that there are any recovered funds, and I've been watching. But please, would you describe the program and how those on the call and our members might be able to search out and to discover those hidden funds?
Hey, Ray, that's you give all those shout outs to Matt Martini. That's his fault. He didn't find you any unclaimed funds for today. So we're going to have to get him to redouble his efforts there and see what he can come up with. Yeah,
believe me, there aren't any there. I would have noticed.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting part of our work. So under state law, and every state has their own program on this, unclaimed funds, abandoned property, I guess is the formal legal term about it. We're really talking about lost money. We're talking about old bank accounts, and our friends at Delhi National, I'm sure, go through this process. If you have a bank account and there's been no activity after a certain period of time, the bank is required to try to reach out and find you. If they can't find you, you see those legal notices periodically with all kinds of names and accounts listed. The money, the account's declared dormant, the money's turned over to the state, and it comes to our office for safekeeping. And, so it's all bank accounts typically that are dormant. It's other kinds of financial accounts. It could be like a stock brokerage account, life insurance. Maybe you were entitled to something from that was left to you. And again, often it's because people move and their contact information isn't up to date. Checks that weren't cashed. This could certainly affect many small businesses. If there was a check that wasn't cashed, you might have been owed a health insurance check, let's say, or a vendor check of some kind. there are various kinds of ways that those monies then are considered abandoned, turned over to the state. And we maintain those accounts in perpetuity until the account holder finds us or we find them. So believe it or not, Ray, we have accounts valued now over $16 billion. And people say, how come? Because you're always reporting how much money is being returned. Well, because more money keeps coming in. And the dormancy periods have been shortened in recent years. And now gift cards is a new area. You know, if you have a registered gift card that isn't used or gets lost, you know, that gets turned over to us. So we're returning well over $1 million a day in people's lost money. And so these accounts are in the names of individuals, in the names of businesses, in the names of nonprofits. And we encourage anyone on this call to check out our website. You know, just go to New York State Comptroller and click on unclaimed funds. We make it easy to search online. Over 85% of our recoveries now are done right online. You could put your information in the computer, get a check back if it's a match in a matter of days. In the old days, you had to do it by mail and it took a long time. And we still have the 800 number, 1-800-221-9311 during business hours if you want to talk to somebody. I also suggest to people, put in the names of friends, relatives, and close relatives, perhaps who passed away, parents, grandparents, and so on. A lot of these accounts are in the names of people who are no longer alive. But if you could show, and if it's an inheritance situation, you know, we need a little more documentation, death certificate, and so on. But that's another way that you know, we could get money returned to people. So I guarantee with the folks that are on this call, there's got to be at least 2 or 3 on the call, if not more, who are connected to one of these funds, either directly or indirectly. And if you remember nothing else of our conversation, you know, please go to the website, call the 800 number. Sometimes people say, oh, I tried, but I had some trouble. If you're having trouble and you see your name or you think it's your name or your business, and you know, give Matt a call and he can track it down. People often ask, so you got 16 billion, how come that money can't be spent for the legislation of the governor? I can assure you, spend that money. We keep enough in reserve based on historic trends to return the money that people will claim. But as I said earlier, these accounts exist in perpetuity. They do not expire. So technically, Ray, if everybody came out of the woodwork and claimed that $16 billion, we'd have to pay it. The reality is some of these accounts go back like to the 1940s and probably will never be claimed, which is why the legislature, you know, appropriates much of the balance, you know, on an annual basis. So the money's being put to good use. We keep enough in reserve to return it. And I believe so far in 2021, from January, we've returned over $100 million already. A lot of people are home with free time and they're using their computer. And I always say, if it's 2 in the morning and you can't go to sleep, go to the controller's website and just search around. And you become very popular with your friends and family members when you find their names and you say, hey, go to the website and you got somebody. And last thing I'll mention on this, there's no fee or charge. And sometimes you'll be contacted by what's called a finder. It's a legitimate business. And they'll say, oh, we'll get this money from the controller for you for a 15% fee. If you get that letter or phone call, ignore it, come right to us. There is no fee. You get 100% of the money that's in there. And for some of the accounts, like those savings accounts that I mentioned with a bank, for a period of time, you're actually able to earn interest as well. So come to us directly. It's not quite the lottery. Usually the recoveries are $50 to $100, but every now and then it's a few hundred, a few thousand. And we had an estate account that I think was like 1.3 million not too long ago. So there's real money there.
How do you forget about $1.3 million?
I've often asked that, although there have been some cases of big accounts where, let's just say, there was some domestic strife and pending divorce proceedings, and certain people would say, we don't want to claim that because we don't want him or her to get their hands on it. So there are always stories behind some of those big accounts that don't get claimed.
Boy, I know where you grew up, and you know, and growing up where I did in a good Italian family, we never forgot about, you know, $6, let alone 1.3 million. So that's pretty
And
amazing.
and all around the house, there was cash in envelopes under the bed,
Absolutely.
in the back of the dresser drawer,
The bread box, yeah, just in case. We always had Entenmann's on hand in case there was company.
Absolutely.
Tom, you've been very gracious with your time this morning, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but are there things that we should know about the Comptroller's office that we have not covered?
Well, a couple of things I would say. Certainly, if any of you have business with the state, and I know, given the challenge with the pandemic and early on some of the budget challenges, there was some delay in terms of reimbursement and payments. Be in touch with our office. Very often, a delay in a payment to a business or a grant to a nonprofit or to a government has to do with the agency that you're dealing with directly hasn't sent the paperwork to us for the final sign off. But certainly if there's a delay in our office, we stand ready to expedite. And even if the delay is at the agency level, we can help, shake things loose. So keep in mind, we can help track down, those kinds of payments. I mentioned the Pursuit Lending Program. Pursuit Lending, as Ray can recall, that organization used to be known as the New York Business Development Corporation. Pat McCrell is the head of it. He does a great job. Now it's called Pursuit Lending. They rebranded. It's a small business lending program that very often our small businesses aren't fully aware of. So we always try to remind people about it for working capital, for real property, for equipment. It has a goal of minimum 25% lending to women and minority-owned small businesses, and they always exceed that goal. It's a wonderful program, and what people don't realize is state pension fund helps to capitalize that program.
Right.
So we get a secure return. It's not a huge return, but I would encourage anybody that has an interest in small business lending, if they haven't considered Pursuit Lending, and we can help put you in touch with the people there, to follow up about that. I would also mention on our website, and we always encourage people to look at the website. We have a lot of information there. We've developed what we call a COVID-19 survival financial toolkit. Included in there is information of value to small businesses, resources you could access. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. We certainly touched on unclaimed funds and follow up on that. So, we've been trying, besides the bread and butter of what our core mission is about, to be responsive to the challenges that we've all been going through in this COVID environment. So if any of those topics are of interest, start with the website. Ray knows how to reach Matt Martini. We're happy to follow up on any of this. And look, stay safe, use the masks. We're in much better shape than we were, but we know it's still a tough time. I'm not a doctor, but I've gotten my vaccination. I've gotten the 2. Everybody will make their own decision. But I think now that more vaccine is available, again, I won't tell anybody what to do. I can only tell you what I've done. I know too many people that got COVID. I know too many families that lost loved ones. I know there are concerns sometimes out there about vaccinations, but to me, the bigger concern is getting COVID, and we're not through this yet. There's still a ways to go. Please be careful, be safe, and let's hope that we can continue to reopen slowly, carefully, smartly. And I think there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we just got to still be careful as we navigate through the next few months.
And I think what you just said is absolutely key. Be smart. That's a lot of what comes down to.
Yeah.
Well, New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We always enjoy seeing Matt at our chamber events, but you're always welcome to join us as well. And
I'll come if you have some Entenmann's the next time I show up.
If I have to go and get those Entenmann's myself, we will have Entenmann's for you.
Great.
Upstate, we're more of a Freihoffer kind of place.
Great. Thank you. This
Good
is great.
seeing you this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Take care, everybody.
And thank you all for joining us this morning. I'll see you all next month. One of our New York State Assembly representatives, Brian Miller, who represents the 101st Assembly District, he has that kind of narrow piece that comes through Delaware County. He's going to be our featured speaker at our next program. Just as a reminder, I'm going to send you copies of this broadcast, of this recording of this morning's meeting a little bit later on today, and I will include all the information, all the contact information that Matt Martini has shared with us during the presentation as well. I see Matt included his cell phone number. I thought I was special by having his cell phone number, but I guess he gives that to everybody. So I'll include all that when you get that email. Again, I hope to see you next month at our next Chamber Connects when we connect with Assemblyman Brian Miller. Remember, at the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, we are stronger together. See you next month.